All right, here's another talk. This one is going to be probably the most controversial, but I think it's reasonable. I just don't have a solution, but I have good intentions and I think a pretty good thought process. So I'm not going to talk about what it's about, although you'll probably figure out what it is I'm talking about. So sports and athletic competitions are, I would say, arguably the oldest form of play to humankind. Like I was off the road. Anyway, so it can be argued that the first people were just like racing each other. I'll race you to that tree, I'll race you to the block, let's see who can race to that rock and back the fastest, or let's see who can run the longest until one person like gives up. So those are sort of the oldest forms of play to like humans. I mean, you can even think like who can throw the rock the furthest, chase a bull, whatever. So athletic events are some of the oldest forms of play to like all humans, right? And if that's the case, oh, that's even shaky. I don't know. Oh, that's better. If that's the case, then it doesn't seem right to prohibit anybody from playing in sports. Yeah, it's sort of ingrained in human nature, I would probably say. I haven't done the studies. Maybe. That there is an inherent desire to have like a competition with other people. I mean, you can just see who's strongest, who's fastest, who's lightest, who's more powerful, whatever it is, right? And so we all have this inherent desire to play and have like athletic competitions. So nobody should be prohibited from those because it is pretty much like a human thing to do. However, part of having competitions is you want to assume that it's fair and that you can control for the equality of it as best as possible. So I have a friend who's like 6 feet tall. He's 6'6", and he is incredibly strong. He was the champion, like high jumper, like in our high school district, and so I'm like under 5'11". I think I'm 5'10" or 5'9.5", somewhere in there. And so I think to have a competition to see who can dunk the basketball the most wouldn't really be a fair competition, right? Yeah, I mean, neither one of us are taking like performance enhancing drugs, assuming the training is the same, assuming all facets of it are equal. To have like a slam dunk contest would, like, for me to agree to that would be kind of dumb because one, I can't dunk, and two, he's like 8.5 inches taller than me, so he's already closer to the net. He can dunk kind of without trying, and so for me to challenge him in that, or for him to challenge me in that, I wouldn't accept it because I'm just gonna lose. There's no point. Like, it's useless. And so as competitions are created, the competitors want to assume that it's fair and that no one's given an advantage from the beginning, and that it's fairly equal, and that the chances of winning you think are about 50-50, right? If you thought your chances of winning were a lot lower, maybe you wouldn't take it. You wouldn't take the challenge. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. I would say most people probably, if they thought they had like a 5% chance of winning and a 95% chance of losing, they probably wouldn't do it. And you want the rules fair. So if I'm going to race you to the tree that's down the street, we're both going to start at the same time, at the same place, and we're ending at the same place. The measures of the competition are fair. The ground should be the same. Like, assuming everything is equal, it comes down to just like sort of who's better. That's why in a lot of sports there's very tight rules to keep like the court is the same on both sides in basketball and soccer, right? They don't have one net that's smaller or one net that's bigger. They don't have a narrower field on one side than the other, and so on. The playing field and the conditions of the event are fair to all parties. This is sort of the inherent desire in athletes, is to kind of just see if all things are equal, who among us is better. It wouldn't make sense for me to like challenge like a 10-year-old to like a strength contest, because I would hopefully beat them. But I would challenge somebody who's in like my weight class, my age, and I would assume like my training ability or my level of training, to make all things equal. If not, if there is something that's different, competitors would want to know, right? And I think athletes and competitors, and even if you're just like fans of sport, you would probably agree to that. Like, if you told me I was going to be in a slam dunk contest, I'd be like, all right, like I don't know how to slam dunk, but I'll give it a shot. And then you told me like my competitor would be like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I'd be like, why? No. If I didn't know that, and I walked up to the day of the competition and Kareem's on the court and it's me, I'm like, this is dumb. Why didn't you tell me this is my competitor? Like, this is who my competition is? I wouldn't take that at all. Which is why there are a lot of sports that have very finely tuned measures for competitive advantage. So like jiu-jitsu has not only weight classes, but belts, assuming you're doing gi. I guess no gi too, there is a little bit, but there's a belting system in jiu-jitsu, so you know that these two people have a similar level of competition, of training, and of experience, as well as having a weight class where they're within your weight class. So it's essentially someone who's exactly like you or just like you. Are you better? Do you understand it more? Are you stronger or more flexible, or is your mind around it better? Considering all training and everything is equal. The thing that kind of upsets competitive athletes is when they sign up for an event or take place in a competition and they then find out that their competitors have an advantage, because that takes away the sanctity of like competition and sport away. Especially when it comes to like very physical combative sports. I would say just physical sports. So there are sports that don't have like an opponent physically stopping you or trying to prevent you from winning or scoring, like running track or like discus or powerlifting or like swim meets. There's no opponent who's physically trying to prevent you from doing your best, compared to wrestling, boxing, jiu-jitsu, MMA. I mean, you can say like basketball, soccer, football, obviously. Like, your opponent is physically trying to prevent you from getting any points. You can argue that like swimming, you just have to swim as hard as you can to see if you're faster than the other person, and you want as many advantages as you can, or as many advantages as you can from like shaving your head, getting rid of your body hair, finding the sleekest like bodysuit you can wear, or a Speedo, anything to prevent drag and anything to prevent like anything that could potentially hold you back from performing to your very best ability. But with sports where there's like an opposing side, that none of that matters. All the competition is doing is like physically preventing you from like winning or even scoring a point. And to athletes who have never been in like, or anybody really, who's never been in a sport or taken part in a athletic competition where your opposition now has the ability to put their hands on you to prevent you from doing anything, if you've been in that situation, you know there's a feeling of like almost helplessness that comes with knowing that your opponent is bigger or stronger than you, right? None of your training, none of your will matters. It doesn't matter how good you think you are. There are times where you are just physically bested by your opponent, and that is like a miserable feeling. But to those athletes who have never had that, I don't know if they know that feeling, right? I mean, as in I don't know if they've had that feeling. Most of the people I know who have played sports have played sports with like an opposing player, like trying to prevent them from scoring, whether it's football, basketball, soccer, wrestling, whatever, jiu-jitsu. I don't think I know anybody who the only sport they've played have been just like timed based events with no opposing force. And so as someone who's been in like a combative sport, like I would want to know if the person I'm competing against has like an inherent advantage, not inherent, but like an advantage over me that I didn't know about, whether they were like overweight in the weight class, or they're on steroids, or like as a freshman wrestler going against like a varsity state champion. Like if I didn't know that, I trained a fighter once who was sandbagged by a fighter from another country. He changed his name and he fought as a rookie to get experience, and my fighter was an amateur at the time, and he got sort of beat up by this professional fighter who he didn't know was a professional fighter. And that's like, it's disheartening. It ruins the feeling of competition and fairness because there's an advantage that you don't know about. Well, you know that is an advantage, but you don't know that your opponent has the advantage. And that gets like really I don't know what the word would be. Like, painful. It's painful as an athlete to feel like something was pulled over your eyes. But going back to the original point is nobody should be barred from competition. So therein lies this weird problem that we want things to be fair. Competitors want competitions to be fair and equal as best as possible. But there are those who want to feel like they're allowed in sports, which I would argue and say everybody should be allowed in sports. Like, if this is an inherent human feature of competition and playing and athletic events, then nobody should be barred from participating in them. I mean, we have like Special Olympics, we have wheelchair basketball, there's like the paralyzed hockey where they're on like the sleds. There's all types of adapted sports so that everybody can have the thrill and the fun that comes with trying your absolute best to beat somebody in a sport. And for those who have experienced competition, you know the thrill and the anxiety you get from competing and not knowing if you're going to win, but you're trying your best, and you go and you train and you practice day in and day out, and you're trying to cut weight, you're trying to do the best you can for hydration and nutrition and strength training to see if you can be the best and to see if you can beat your opponent, assuming all things are fair and equal. Everybody should be allowed to have that feeling of like, can I do it? Can I win? But part of that comes this responsibility on the other side of you, like you are somebody else's opponent. You know you want it to be fair and equal. So there's a responsibility on your end as the competitor to try and keep it as fair and equal as possible. It is your responsibility as a competitor. And so like, you can train because training comes down to like will and time. You can do all the training you want. Diet is fair to everyone. Time doesn't change. We all have 24 hours. If you want to spend 20 of them sleeping and I want to spend 20 of them training, that is kind of your problem. But to have an advantage that your opponent cannot match under any circumstance, your opponent should know about it. They should know that their competitor has an advantage that they cannot match. There's nothing you can do to match this advantage. And if you tell them that this person has an advantage, height, weight, years of experience, sandbagging you as a professional fighter to an amateur, if they have this advantage, you should be notified so that you still have the ability to make the call. You see it a lot in professional fights where one of the opponents won't make weight and they still give the option to the fighter of saying, hey, your opponent was overweight, but if you still want the fight, you can have the fight. I mean, obviously there's like, very often there's like a financial like burden to the opponent for not making weight. So they'll get fined, or the other person will already make more money because they made weight. But what's important to know is that the competitors know about the advantage or disadvantage on their end. And so I don't quite have a solution yet, but I do feel like there is something to be said about trying to create a playing field so that everybody who participates and anybody who wants to can. assuming that all the competitors involved know about the inherent advantage or disadvantage. And that is kind of where I sit. I mean, you can take this and apply it to whatever situation is kind of in your mind. I'm not going to list whatever situations I might be talking about. But the purpose of competition is to keep it fair. The problem with competitions is now that there's money and fame and power and glory involved, there is a chance of what am I looking for? Corruption. I mean, there have been rumors that boxing has been corrupt for a long time, and that sucks as like watchers and fans of the sport, because fans of the sport who don't want to get into the ring and get punched in the face, they want to watch the sport, and they want to also assume all things were equal going into the event, and they want to see who's better between like Tyson and Holyfield. And when we get told that there's corruption involved because people want to make money, it lessens the desire to want to watch or to want to participate or to want to even care about the sport anymore, which only harms those who are in the sport, because now they're not going to get paid. And now if it's corrupt and they know it's corrupt, then they're going to lose their passion for the sport. And then this like childhood dream that some of them may have had to be the best track runner, the best cyclist, the best swimmer, the best MMA fighter, the best whatever. If they know that now their sport has been corrupted by those who have poor intentions because they just want to win what seems like at any cost, and they're throwing away their responsibility as an equal competitor, it kind of puts a bad taste in your mouth, and you don't want to like watch the competition. You don't want to participate. Like, you know you're not going to win. You know you're not going to get a scholarship. You know you're not going to get a medal in the end because they're favoring a group of people, or they're favoring a certain person, or they're favoring their athlete, or they're favoring those with steroids or whatever. They're being favored over you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And you can try your hardest, but your chances of winning, you are aware, become slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. And the competition hasn't even started yet. So that's my take. Maybe if you see this, you can agree. I don't want to ban anybody from any sport. What I'd want to do is create a more stronger feeling of responsibility, and we'll call it professional athletic responsibility, to maintain the best form of competition possible. Let me know what you think.